Hi everyone, I'm Leanne and I have a pretty hefty book haul for you. 7 of them were books that I got from work, and the rest are books that are solely for my personal reading pleasure. But I did get these books from a variety of different places, and we've got a mix of different kinds of books as well. Without further ado, I'm going to get into it, and I'm going to start with the books that I pre-ordered. So this is Bittersweet by Hattie Williams. This is the story of a young woman, I think she's about 22, 23 years old, in her first job in publishing as a publicity assistant at quite a literary publisher. It is here that she meets an author that she has really idolized, and this is a much older man. I think he's in his early to mid 50s, and he's one of those kind of rare authors that has achieved the level of fame where he is recognizable. You know, lots of authors, they might be well known within the kind of bookish world, but if you go to kind of mainstream recognition, there are fewer authors that have that level of fame. But this author is one of them, and it is about the affair that begins between him and this much younger publicity assistant. Always really interested in books that explore power dynamics in relationships. Sometimes I find publishing books, I find them maybe a bit too close to home in terms of my professional life. But I think because this is in such a kind of literary publishing space as opposed to a kids publishing space, which is where I work, there's a disconnect there that I find really good. But anyway, this is getting into a review, so I will leave it there. I actually heard this author speak at an event, and the way she spoke about this book made me incredibly keen to read it. And in that same event, she was in conversation with Emily Slapper, who wrote Everyone I Know Is Dying, which is another book that I pre-ordered. This is another one that explores kind of the complexity and confusion of being a young woman, particularly in a kind of media landscape. And it also has a relationship that has challenging power dynamics in terms of someone's professional life, but also their life experience and age. But this one particularly looks at a young woman who, on the surface, it seems like everything is going her way, everything is kind of flying in her professional life, but behind closed doors, there is a lot of pain and feelings of depression. It was really interesting to hear these two authors in conversation with one another because of those overlapping themes. Another book I pre-ordered was The Lost Story by Meg Schaefer. So I read The Wishing Game last year, and I think I crowned it my favorite book that I read in 2024. I have such strong memories of reading that book. I bought it in New York, so that's really special to me. But also the morning that I read it, I completely devoured it in one very cozy reading morning, and it was my first 5-star read of the year. So I'm going into this one with quite high hopes, and thematically there are some things in this book that bolster that confidence that I have in this being another 5-star read. So in The Wishing Game, we were exploring a lot of themes of how we as adults connect with the fantasy stories of our childhood. And that's a theme that over the years I have had a lot of enjoyment from. And this one is blurbed as being a Narnia-inspired fairy tale. So 15 years ago, 2 boys went missing in the woods, and 6 months later they reappeared. But they have no explanation of where they have been and how they returned. Now in the present day, we are following Emily, whose sister also went missing under the same sort of circumstances, but never reappeared. Emily connects with these previously missing boys to try and discover what it was that happened to them and what happened to her sister. And that involves them returning to the magical realm where they once went missing. I really enjoyed a lot of books that take kind of an adult look at why we are so drawn to fantasy worlds, particularly as children. And the overwhelming feeling I had when I read The Wishing Game was I was like, this is a middle grade book for adults. And that's how I want to feel about this one as well. I also picked up a copy of Frankie by Graham Norton. So I have read quite a few Graham Norton books, and the first few that I'd read for him, I thought they were good. I didn't really think too much of them. But then I read Homestretch last year and I completely adored it. I thought it was one of the best things I read last year. And I heard such good things about his latest release, Frankie. So our titular character, Frankie, is a woman in her 80s. When Damien, a young Irish carer, arrives at her London flat to keep an eye on her after she's had a fall, this sparks a memory for her. As we follow Frankie's life story from post-war Ireland to the art scene of the New York in the 1960s. What I really love about Graham Norton's books is this uncovering of forgotten histories and the stories that maybe older people have that they've not spoken about more broadly or publicly. So definitely looking forward to reading this one. I have a few books that I picked up secondhand. There were more than these 3 that I'll talk about later on when I'm talking more about the books for younger readers. but these are the adult books that I picked up secondhand, the first of which is Good Material by Dolly Alderton. So I've read Dolly Alderton's non-fiction. I also read her debut novel Ghosts, and I really enjoyed Ghosts. I thought it was great. But I have quite mixed expectations going into Good Material. So this is the story of a breakup, but unusually for the type of stuff that I typically read, and I would say probably a lot of Dolly Alderton's readership as well, this is that heartbreak and breakup told from the perspective of the man in a male-female relationship. I believe this book also deals quite significantly with the stand-up comedy scene because that is our main male character's job. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what she does with it being predominantly from that male perspective. I think it's something that we don't often get to see a lot of, but also I'm intrigued to see that male perspective through a female lens. I'm also very intrigued to see how it deals with that area of the media and the comedy scene as well. I picked up Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I've spoken about Emily Henry quite a few times on the channel recently, saying that I was quite behind on the Emily Henry train, that I needed to read some of her books to catch up. But actually, I have not read Beach Read, which is kind of the book that catapulted her into a new platform of recognition. I do think I tried to listen to this on audiobook once, and it was like maybe right book, wrong time was the sense that I got around it. I know most people probably know the premise of this book, so I will be quick, but just in case, this is a male-female romance where both of our main characters are authors who are suffering from writer's block. So our female character is a romance writer, the male character is a much more kind of serious literary fiction writer, and they decide to swap genres to try and cure each other's writer's block. And the love story unfolds from there. So I do have Funny Story on my shelves, which is the latest Emily Henry paperback. I think I will try and read this, and then I will go to Funny Story, and then I'll be like up to date with the paperbacks for this author. I also picked up a copy of Orlando by Virginia Woolf. So I have read a bit of Virginia Woolf before, and I've enjoyed her books, but I would say the kind of writing style of them isn't particularly what I am drawn to. But I'm far more interested in the subject matter of Orlando than I have been with some of the other work that I've read from this author. It's a book that is considered a real kind of defining moment in queer identity and gender exploration. It is about a very beautiful man in the court of Queen Elizabeth I, who one morning wakes up transported to the 18th century and into the body of a woman. Now, we often talk about things as cover buys, but I have to say, this was a real spine buy for me. Just the combination of the blue and the pink, it was ticking a lot of boxes for me in terms of the aesthetic, and this was a book that was on my radar, but having found this edition of it, it definitely bumped up my buying priorities when I saw this secondhand. But I'm really intrigued to see if there are more Canongate books published in these editions, because I think they're really beautiful. There were a couple of books that I got for free in the Aesop's Queer Library. So if you don't know about the Aesop Queer Library, every year the like beauty toiletries brand Aesop, they clear out one of their London stores from their own products and they fill it with queer books to celebrate Pride. And if you go along, you can help yourself to a free book. So I went twice, so I ended up with 2 free books. Typically, you do need to queue for quite a while because depending on like the time of day that you go, it's quite popular. People want their free books. So I think it's totally worth it. And the queue is always just like a really nice vibe of friendly people who like love queer books. So the fiction book I picked up was Disappoint Me by Nicola Dinnan. This author's previous book, Bellies, has been so highly recommended to me, and I wasn't going to pick up a copy of this until I had read that one. But because I had an opportunity to get this one as a freebie, I decided to pick it up. So this is about the relationship between Max and Vincent. So Max is 30 years old, is a published poet and a legal counsel for a tech company. It appears that she is living her best life, but beneath the surface that is not the case. She is dealing with kind of years of gender and body dysmorphia. Enter Vincent. Vincent has his own complications and nuances in his present day life and his history, and this is a novel about whether the two of them find happiness. And then I picked up Love in Exile by Sean Fay. I feel like this one has been like the book of the summer that everyone has been reading. Like all the cool girls have been reading this one. This non-fiction book is the author's exploration of the topic of love and all of the nuances and complexities, all the societal expectations, experiencing all those things as a queer person as a trans woman. I think this one will be really interesting. I'm always intrigued to hear people's explorations of this topic in particular, because it's one that is so central to like the human experience. So definitely looking forward to this one. This next non-fiction book is one that I'm not gonna say that I'm looking forward to reading, but it is one of my most anticipated reads of not only the whole year, but I think possibly like my whole life. And that is The New Age of Sexism: How the AI Revolution is Reinventing Misogyny by Laura Bates. So I am a huge Laura Bates fan. I have been reading and watching and consuming her work for over a decade. I largely credit her work with one of the reasons I had a feminist awakening as a teenager. And I've been very fortunate that over the years I've had the opportunity to work with her on a couple of occasions. This is her latest non-fiction book that is published by the adult division where I work. So I managed to pick up a copy of this one from the office. Over the years, Laura has dealt with a breadth of topics in relation to sexism, in relation to misogyny and power and legislation around those kinds of things. In this book, she tackles AI and the role that is playing in a new age of sexism. The book is incredibly well researched. I remember the last time I saw Laura, she was telling me about some of the research that went into this, showing me some shocking imagery from her research trips for this book. I think the world of artificial intelligence and how rapidly that technology is developing is so scary in relation to these topics, and it's something that I've been really interested in for a number of years. I became really fascinated with it while I was at university, and I was taking a writing sci-fi and fantasy module, and I didn't know like too much about like sci-fi. So what did I know about? I thought I knew about kind of sex work and the sex industry and feminism, so I decided to do a lot of research into the development of those things and give kind of like a bit of a Black Mirror kind of twist to what I was writing. But the actual reality that we find ourselves in 2025 is far scarier than anything that I imagined at that time. So yeah, I'm not going to say I'm looking forward to reading this one, because I think it will be quite stark and scary, but a really important read as well. Okay, moving on to the books for younger readers and a few more that I got secondhand. So I picked up the Girls series by Jacqueline Wilson. So we have Girls in Tears, Girls Under Pressure, Girls in Love, and Girls Out Late. So I'm pretty sure I read at least two of these when I was much younger. I think I maybe read the full series, but honestly my memory is so patchy. And I don't necessarily remember the exact plot details of this series. I just kind of remember the feeling that it gave me. And when I was reading it as a younger reader, I do remember that these were like the slightly older Jacqueline Wilson ones that felt like a bit edgier and a bit more grown up. Last year, Jacqueline Wilson published Think Again, which was an adult revisiting to these characters. And I kept saying that I wanted to reread this series before reading that book, so here is my opportunity. I also picked up a copy of This Winter by Alice Oseman, so this is another one that I got secondhand. I really wanted to get all of Alice Oseman's novels and novellas in these editions because they've been reissued with a more kind of graphic novel style cover, which I think look great, but these are the covers that I really associate with reading Alice Oseman and my experiences over the years. So I really wanted to make sure I had all of her books in these editions. So I'm delighted that I now finally have the last one for my collection. So this is one that is set in the Heartstopper world. So we are following some of the characters from that series. As it is a Christmas book, I will be waiting for the festive season to read this one, and I think it will be a super quick read. Speaking of super quick, I'm gonna fly through the books that I got from work recently. So I got Skandar and the Spirit War by A.F. Stedman. This is the fifth and final book in the Skandar series. This is one of my favorite middle grade series that I have ever read. It's difficult to talk about this one in more detail because it is the fifth book in the series, but I will be talking about this one in my August reading wrap up as well, so I will give you more of my thoughts in that video. Another fifth book in the series, this is Grimwood Rock the Vote. So we are back in Grimwood following all of the eccentric and wild characters that the forest has to offer, and this time there is an election going on. The Unfamous Diaries of Daisy Brewster, The Frenemies by Jenny Valentine. So this is a book for tweens formatted with diary entries where we follow our main character Daisy Brewster, who dreams of being an actor but is very annoyed when her famous cousin, who is an actor and an influencer, comes to stay with her. There is some definite conflict and frenemies action there. Also for tweens, I have Cringe Club by Emily Jane Clark. So this is really unique in the way that it is told, because it is told through the format of a group chat. So you get to see like basically WhatsApp conversations between a group of friends, between our main character Kennedy and like her sister and her mom. You can also see like her Google search history. And I think that format just lends itself to some really fantastic storytelling. So this is another one that I will talk about in my wrap up. This is a proof of Finn's epic fails by Phil Earle. This one's coming out in January, and it is very funny fiction about Finn, N.O. Hope, and all of the ways that he fails and all of the funniness with his friend group and school and his siblings. And it's also illustrated throughout as well. And then two young adult books to finish it up. I have Bury Your Friends by Benjamin Dean. This is a young adult thriller about a group of friends who, following their graduation from high school, they go to this like country manor to celebrate the end of school. But their celebrations take a sinister twist when they realize there is a killer on the loose who is making a demand that one person be evicted from the house every hour to die. And finally, we have Falling Like Leaves by Misty Wilson. This is a very cozy autumnal romance that is giving you all of those kind of cozy pumpkin spice latte vibes, Gilmore Girls, very cute pumpkins. I've actually not read this one yet, so I will be waiting for like the very autumnal time to enjoy this one. So that is it. They are all of the books that I'm going to talk to you about today. Do leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you've read any of these. What did you think of them? Are you excited to read any of them? If you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything particular to say, leave me the stack of books emoji. I feel like that's the only emoji it can really be today for such a massive pile of books. That is it for me today. I hope you're well, and I'll speak to you in my next video.